Hello students, it's Ms. Shapiro. I hope that you are having a wonderful afternoon. And so here you are in Block 8, and I promised to talk to you guys just a little bit about the purpose of Block 8. Now, after September 10th, we will be rolling out a few different things that are definitely going to be beneficial to students. One of them is we are going to get into our social emotional learning lessons. Okay, those are always good and great discussion as well with advised groups. And then another thing that we're going to be rolling out is called responsive scheduling. Now we've got a committee of teachers who is working on that right now to ensure that it all runs smoothly, but the basic gist of it is teachers will get to request you to say, hey, I want to work with this student at this time, so come and see me during Block 8. Or you can say, oh, wait, I want to go join this teacher or this club or whatever during this time, and you can opt into it if you haven't already been snapped up by somebody. Okay? But while those things are getting worked out, I have a couple of lessons for you that I would like to share that I think are just valuable life lesson type things. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today is something called Atomic Habits, and I mentioned it a little bit last year, maybe the year before, but this year we're going to take a deeper dive. Now, first off, I am starting with these pictures of cyclists. All right, now these guys are from Great Britain. They are part of a cycling team of 4, or they were. Now this is not from this recent Olympics. This is from 2008. Okay, so it's a little while back there for you guys. But these guys were originally known as one of the crummiest teams in all of cycling. And then there they are in 2008 in Beijing, and they won gold. How exactly did they accomplish that? How did they do that? Well, it all relates to 1%. So I want you to think about this as we're reading together, because we're going to read together a little bit today. How does getting better by 1% every single day relate to me and to my life? All right, I want you to think about that. Well, what might I do 1% better on anyway? What's 1%? I mean, how much of my time in my day is 1% of my day, and so on, okay? So just be thinking about that question as I am reading to you from this book by James Clear. Now, we're not going to read all of Chapter 1. We're going to read a segment of it, and then I have a few lines that I want to share with you from it. And then after we, come back together, we are going to take a look at some questions that you guys can discuss as an advised group. And then finally, you're going to answer this question for yourself, okay? Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started. So Atomic Habits. First off, you're probably wondering, well, why is that the title anyway? That's a little strange. You should always wonder about the title of a book and what the significance of it is anyway, right? So with this one, we see atomic, an extremely small amount of a thing, the single irreducible unit of a larger system. Definition 2, the source of immense energy or power. You've probably all heard of like atomic bomb, la la la. Okay. So yes, all right, extreme or immense energy. All right, a habit. A habit is a routine or practice performed regularly, an automatic response to a specific situation. So think to yourselves for a moment, and advise teachers, if you want to pause this and talk about it, what are habits that you guys have right now? Like, what is a habit that you have, both good and bad? Like me, my good habit is I wake up at 6 a.m. every day. All right, that's great. Lots of time to do things, right? My bad habit is I go, and one of the first things I usually do is I get on my iPad and I read the newspaper for like an hour. That is not a good habit because it's taking up a ton of time in the morning when I probably should be doing other things. So you talk about it for a couple of minutes here. What are some good and some bad habits that you have? All right, moving on. The fundamentals. Why tiny changes make a big difference. The surprising power of atomic habits. The fate of British cycling changed one day in 2003. The organization, which was the governing body for professional cycling in Great Britain, had recently hired David Brailsford as its new performance director. At the time, professional cyclists in Great Britain had endured nearly 100 years of mediocrity. mediocrity, they're kind of crappy. Since 1908, British riders had won just a single gold medal at the Olympic Games, and they had fared even worse in cycling's biggest race, the Tour de France. In 110 years, no British cyclist had ever won the event. Ugh. Meh. Unhappy. In fact, the performance of British riders had been so underwhelming that one of the top bike manufacturers in Europe refused to sell bikes to the team because they were afraid it would hurt sales if other professionals saw the Brits using their gear. Brailsford had been hired to put British cycling on a new trajectory. New path, right? What made him different from previous coaches was his relentless commitment to a strategy that he referred to as the aggregation of marginal gains, which was the philosophy of searching for a tiny margin of improvement in everything you do. Brailsford said, the whole principle came from the idea that if you broke down everything you could think of that goes into riding a bike and then improve it by 1%, you will get a significant increase when you put them all together. Brailsford and his coaches began by making small adjustments you might expect from a professional cycling team. They redesigned the bike seats to make them more comfortable and rubbed alcohol on the tires for a better grip. That's weird. They asked riders to wear electrically heated overshorts to maintain ideal muscle temperature while riding and used biofeedback sensors to monitor how each athlete responded to a particular workout. What, they hook up like little microbe thingies to them? That's really strange to me, whatever. The team tested various fabrics in a wind tunnel and had their outdoor riders switch to indoor racing suits, which proved to be lighter and more aerodynamic. But they didn't stop there. Brailsford and his team continued to find 1% improvements in overlooked and unexpected areas. They tested different types of massage gels to see which one led to the fastest muscle recovery. They hired a surgeon to teach each rider the best way to wash their hands to reduce the chances of catching a cold. They determined the type of pillow and mattress that led to the best night's sleep for each rider. This seems kind of extreme to me, but whatever. They even painted the inside of the team truck white, which helped them spot little bits of dust that would normally slip by unnoticed but could degrade the performance of the finely tuned bikes. As these and hundreds of other small improvements accumulated, the results came faster than anyone could have imagined. Now, that's pretty cool. So, as these and hundreds of other small improvements accumulated, the results came faster than anyone could have imagined. Interesting. All right. Just 5 years after Brailsford took over, the British cycling team dominated the road and track cycling events at the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing. Remember that picture I showed you? That's what I was talking about. Where they won an astounding 60% of the gold medals available. 4 years later, when the Olympic Games came to London, the Brits raised the bar as they set 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. That same year, Bradley Wiggins became the first British cyclist to win the Tour de France. The next year, his teammate Chris Froome won the race, and he would go on to win again in 2015, 2016, and 2017, giving the British team 5 Tour de France victories in 6 years. So think about it. You might even want to pause and stop and talk here for just a moment with your advised group. So, how can these little tiny changes have an impact for you? Think about a little tiny change that you could make in your life. Share it out as a group. What do you got? Okay. During the 10-year span from 2007 to 2017, British cyclists won 178 world championships and 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals, and captured 5 Tour de France victories in what is widely regarded as the most successful run in cycling history. The most successful run. All because of that 1%, huh? How did this happen? How does a team of previously ordinary athletes transform into world champions with tiny changes that at first glance would seem to make a modest difference at best? Why do small improvements accumulate into such remarkable results? And how can you replicate this approach in your own life? That, to me, is the important question. Okay? Why small habits make a big difference. It is so easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimate the value of making small improvements on a daily basis. Too often, we convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action, whether it is losing weight, building a business, writing a book, winning a championship, or achieving any other goal. We put pressure on ourselves to make some earth-shattering improvement that everyone will talk about. Meanwhile, improving by 1% isn't particularly notable. Sometimes it isn't even noticeable, but it can be far more meaningful, especially in the long run. The difference a tiny improvement can make over time is astounding. Here's how the math works out. If you can get better by 1% each day for a year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done. Ooh, look at that. If you can get... That's pretty impressive. Conversely, if you get 1% worse each day for 1 year, you'll decline nearly down to 0. What starts as a small win or a minor setback accumulates into something much more. Okay, take a look here. 1% improvement. Whee! Upwards we go. 1% decline. Blah, blah. Okay. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. The same ways that money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. They seem to make little difference on any given day, and yet the impact they deliver over the months and years can be enormous. It is only when looking back 2, 5, or perhaps 10 years later that the value of good habits and the cost of bad ones becomes strikingly apparent. This can be a difficult concept to appreciate in daily life. We often dismiss small changes because they don't seem to matter very much in the moment. If you save a little money now, you're still not a millionaire. If you go to the gym 3 days in a row, you're still out of shape. If you study Mandarin for an hour tonight, you still haven't learned the language. We make a few changes, but the results never quite seem to come quickly, so we slide back into our previous routines. Unfortunately, the slow pace of transformation also makes it easy to let a bad habit slide. If you eat an unhealthy meal today, the scale doesn't move much. If you work late tonight and ignore your family, they'll forgive you. If you procrastinate and you put your project off until tomorrow, there will usually be time to finish it later. A single decision is easy to dismiss. But when we repeat 1% errors day after day by replicating poor decisions, duplicating tiny mistakes, and rationalizing little excuses, our small choices compound into toxic results. It's the accumulation of many missteps, a 1% decline here and there, that eventually leads into a problem. Okay, so now we're going to do a little skimming here. I've got some things underlined for you that I just want to read to you, and then you guys are going to have some discussion with your advised group on some questions, okay? So, making a choice that is 1% better or 1% worse seems insignificant in the moment, but over the span of moments that make up a lifetime, these choices that determine the difference between who you are and who you could be. Ooh. No pressure there, right? Okay, let's skip ahead. Now, habits often appear to make no difference until you cross a critical threshold and unlock a new level of performance. Like you might be doing a good thing here and, again and again and again and again. You don't notice much until all of a sudden one day you're like, oh, wait. That is making a difference. All right. Let's keep scrolling. We're going to skip that. Now, the task of breaking a bad habit is like uprooting a powerful oak within us. And the task of building a good habit is like cultivating a delicate flower, one day at a time. Deep stuff, guys. The only way to actually win is to get better every day. And I think that really shows with that British cycling team. Okay, so you guys are going to have some discussion questions in your group today or with your advice. I hope that you have enjoyed this and kind of gotten something out of it.